Hey guys, welcome back for another video. This time we're looking at another Song of Ice and Fire painting tutorial covering the Mountain Men. So this model's already been primed and has already been painted, obviously, because this is the test model I did, and this model has already been primed and airbrushed. I've just used like a dark grey primer for him, and then just used like a Luftwaffe World War II uniform as like a base, and then used a little bit of the Mirage Blue from the Vallejo color range, just as another, it's like a mid-tone highlight, and that was it. I just kept it fairly dark. Just here I'm just using that Mirage Blue, the Vallejo Mirage Blue. It's the French Mirage Blue, okay, from Vallejo. But any sort of mid-tone blue grey would do, and yeah, just adding that as a mid-tone, like a highlight, just edging out on all the areas of his armor. They're 90% armored, these guys, basically, so that's why I chose to do it with the airbrush. Yeah, so just make your way around the model, just edging out any of those armor plates and chainmail and what have you. Yeah, now I'm just adding a lighter coloured grey, which is Stonewall grey, but any sort of very light grey that you have. I won't go to white yet. I just want to use like a really light grey just to pick out the highlights again on his armour. So basically the same process as before, but just using that lighter grey. And yeah, just going over the sword parts now, that just right on the edge there, just using the flat end of your brush. And the underside as well you can do, and the hilt as well, if you want to keep it the same colour. Yep, so just working our way around the model, just doing all the highlights that we can see for all the metallic parts. Now I'm just doing the chainmail. I'm just doing it like the wet brush technique, so just putting some paint on the tip of my brush and then just brushing it over the chainmail, just lightly. Yeah, don't press too heavy, otherwise the paint will go into the recesses. That's where we don't want the paint to be. So he's got some chain mail on his arms and around his waist, and on his legs as well. Probably one of my favourite colours to use with armour or anything that's grey or blue even. I like to use that whole red. I'm just using it as like a light wash, and I'm just going to wash the armour down using just a larger bristled brush. That's good for washing and that kind of thing. Yeah, just run it straight over the armour. That'll just settle and nestle nicely into the recesses there and all these joins and that kind of thing. Okay, so now that's all done, and it's now drying. We can now work on the yellow parts. Now the yellow is quite a difficult colour to use. I know the Baratheon have a lot of yellow on their flags and emblems and shields and on their uniforms too. So I'm using this heavy gold brown, and I'm using another brown as well just to mix in with it. That is Flat Earth, I believe, that I'm using there. So I'm using that as a mixture, mixing the two together, because that heavy gold brown is quite opaque. So it's gonna go onto the model much easier, paint on the model much easier in layers rather than just using a yellow. Plus, I don't want these models to have a really bright yellow colour on them. I want them more dirty and more darker. So, yeah, we're going to add that as a base layer to all the sections that we want yellow, which aren't many. I think there's just that tunic or whatever he's wearing under the armour. That'll be yellow. Okay, so now I'm just using that German cam black brown. It's a really nice dark brown. And it's a good alternative to black if you just don't want something that's so dark. And I find it more natural to use like dark browns for like shading and that kind of thing. So all his leather strapping, his belt, and there's his sword scabbard on his back. There's some strapping around his legs, his face, and his beard. We're just gonna paint all that in a dark brown. Okay, so that's all done. Now we're going to add some of this green. Now this green that I have on my palette already, that is the dark sea blue green. I really love this green because it just works beautifully with even with armor, with clothing, anything you want to shade with. I find this green color just perfect for that. So yeah, the whole red and that deep sea green. Dark sea blue. I really recommend as colors to use and to get if you don't have them already or don't have equivalents for them. Yeah, they're really nice colors to use. So I'm using that with the yellow to shade, and after that I'm going back with the base coat that I had already with the heavy gold brown as to go over the raised areas again on all the yellow parts. That's just as a suggestion. If you don't want to shade it with green, that's fine. You just shade it with a brown maybe, or with a grey if you like. whatever, or orange if you want to go like a more of an orangey yellow, you can do it that way too. Yeah, just whatever, whatever aesthetic you like. Okay, so now that's done, we're going to go back to our leathers and start painting them. I've already got a German cam medium brown, so it's just like a medium brown colour that I'm using as a base for that over the German cam black colour. So again, like as all the steps, for any colour, you're starting from a dark colour to a lighter colour. So like I said before, as I always say, if you don't have Vallejo colours, don't worry, just use whatever you got in your range of colours there, and just pick out 3 colours, one that's dark, one that's medium, one that's light. And then if you want to highlight for brown, then I'd use some kind of beige colour, or like an ivory colour or something like that. But beige I think works better. For your metals, then just go for a very light grey to a white, instead of just using white. Have three colours, and then have one colour that's going to be like your main and final highlight. Yeah, white's fine to use. It can look a bit stark, and it can take away the subtlety of the layers sometimes if you use white. So I would recommend using something that's more like an ivory or a beige. I use the another colour that I picked up by accident, actually, the green grey from Vallejo. That's a really nice colour, and I use that for a lot of highlights when I'm doing browns or greys for the armours and that kind of thing as well. So for the face, I'm just using a colour that's already on my palette, which is called Old Rose. Rose Brown. And Old Rose is very similar to that colour anyway. But basically, it's basically like a dwarf flesh. It's really a pinky coloured flesh colour that I really like using as a flesh tone, as a base for my flesh tones. And I'm using the sunny skin tone as the highlight for that flesh. But before I highlight it, I usually go through and give it a good wash of something. Now I'm just doing the beard. I'm just using a brown, just a brown that's on my palette for that. But you know, you can paint it whatever color you like, whatever the facial hair colors and that kind of thing. Yeah, whatever suits you. Maybe you want to keep it black. Maybe you want to do it in like a blonde color, but the blonde colors, you know, might clash against the yellows. So maybe, yeah, some kind of brown or black or grey would be nice for these guys, or a reddish brown, like a red leather brown or a terracotta brown. Yeah, they're really nice too. They're nice warm colors, nice and orangey. I'm just going to do some extra shading, so I'm just adding some of that black brown with some of the hull red mixed up together, and just add some shading where I think it needs to be darker in places, just around the bottom of the plates or inside of the legs and that kind of thing, just to create a bit more of a shadow. And here I'm just adding some extra highlights to the yellow there. If it's a little bit too dark, just adding some beige to the base color that I used, and sort of just picking out some of the raised edges there on the cloak and other parts of you know, where it's situated on his clothing. And here I'm just doing the belt buckle and other buckles on his body that I haven't done before, that I haven't picked out. So yeah, anything else that you need, now is probably the time where you're sort of just finalizing everything and just looking over and just picking out parts of your model that maybe you missed as you're painting through it. So that always happens with me. So I like to just go back and just check everything and just put in the final touches. Yeah, I'm just adding some red to the sword handle and then highlighting that with adding some flesh color to the red, just to pick out the different layers of binding on the handle. And for the last part, I'm just adding some green to the base, just for now anyway, and probably later I'll add some texturing to finish them off. And here I'm just adding some just white highlights just to ping out the very, like very small areas on the armor that I really want to build a strong contrast to. So they're just there to add the final highlights. Okay, so that pretty much wraps him up now. So I hope that tutorial was useful for you, and if you have any comments, please leave them down below. Like how can it improve my tutorials in any way, or if you've got any questions. And thanks very much for watching.